The evening was cold, but unlike other nights during the last week spent here in the city in early December, it felt refreshing. It was the kind of chill that wakes you up, sharpens the senses. As I walked the streets of Williamsburg, I realized how familiar they'd become to me over the past half-decade, and yet tonight, they felt different. This was the opening evening of the Grand Illumination, the event that draws crowds from all over to celebrate the season, and in its own way, the city itself. I've spent years telling stories here, exploring its streets and learning its history. But tonight wasn't just about the past. It was about the present. About what happens when people gather in a place like this. The air buzzed with excitement.
Happy Christmas to one and all. Hip hip! Hooray!
I could feel it in the conversations that surrounded me, the little moments of connection happening everywhere. As anxious holiday spectators awaited a mesmerizing fireworks display like few others. For most of the day and night, it had been just me. Alone in the city, wandering its streets, letting my thoughts drift as I captured moments that surrounded me. Although Sarah was able to join me for a short while earlier in the day to take in some of the pre-Grand Illumination visuals, she had planned some holiday shopping and much-needed quality time with her mother and had to go. We planned to meet up on the capital side of the city later in the evening to view the fireworks together as we do almost every year. If she could make it back in time. Although I missed her company, this left me free to continue exploring Williamsburg at my own pace until our hopeful reuniting later on. Suddenly untethered, moving through the streets without an agenda. I wasn't just documenting the city tonight. I was part of it, absorbing its energy, feeling the weight of an epic evening in the making settle into me. Rewind a few hours prior, and the sun was still rather high in the sky when I first arrived in Williamsburg, the warmth of its light still filling the streets. The day had started with an unexpected eavesdrop on a conversation between Patrick Henry and a few others. His words, full of purpose, hung in the air as I listened in.
After a majority of Virginians determine very well we're going to enter into this federal system of government, I will then pledge my allegiance to these United States, resolved to be the most peaceable of citizens thereafter, and will not in any way do anything to undermine the decision of my fellow countrymen. Who can disregard the earnest request made by General Washington, a man that I refer to not once but twice in letters as the father of our country? Got to do it out of respect for him, he who saved us with his valor.
When he finished, I couldn't help but nod in approval.
Well said.
Thank you, sir.
Now making my way toward Merchant Square, The interaction was still lingering in my mind.
Resolved to be the most peaceful citizens thereafter, and will not in any way do anything to undermine the decision of my fellow countrymen.
An hour or so before sundown, and with each moment, the town felt alive. Its colonial appeal mixing with the energy of the holiday season. Strolling throughout the square, I was greeted by the sight of the grand Christmas tree, always standing near the seated statue of Thomas Jefferson in December. It stood proudly, awaiting nightfall to show off its beautiful shimmering lights against the evening sky. As I continued my exploration in Williamsburg's shopping district, I found myself gazing through the festive windows of nearby shops. Each one was thoughtfully adorned with Christmas decorations, with winter scenes and holiday-inspired figures, garlands, and decor that brought the season to life. Walking again down the Duke of Gloucester Street, it led me to the Palace Green, where the governor's palace stood as the centerpiece. I knew this would be just one of the locations for the evening's grand fireworks display. But as much as the Palace Green beckoned, I had already decided. This year, our spot would be in front of the Capitol. That location had become my favorite vantage point as of last Christmas, offering the perfect view of the night sky as it would soon light up with the brilliance of the illumination, with the Capitol directly behind it, glowing majestically as the fireworks burst overhead. Now near the courthouse, I could feel the anticipation of the evening to come as I followed closely behind the Junior Fife and Drum Corps. As we marched down the well-known street together, I knew soon the sun would dip, and not long after, the official festivities would begin. It's hard to describe what Williamsburg becomes during the evening of the Grand Illumination. Although the decorations and decor certainly add to the magic, it's also the way the city feels, like it's waking up. Not just to celebrate the season, but to remind you why places like this matter. At the doorway of Chowning's, I came across some storytellers surrounded by a small group of onlookers. Their cheerful presentation painted vivid scenes of 18th century colonial dance and flute playing, immersing the audience in a time of lively celebration and music. I didn't stop to listen for too long, but their voices continued to echo as I carried on down the street. I also came upon a comical act of historical origin taking place on the portico of a colonial residence.
You have sawdust for brains.
Well, Lisa, I don't have an empty head like someone I know, though. She does know her history.
Yes, indeed.
Here we go.
How does it
We
start?
wish you a Merry
Christmas. We wish you a Merry Christmas. We wish you a Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year. We wish you
See, I told
to
you we didn't
you.
know the words.
They got it right. And that's the way you do it. Raise a glass and beat the drum. Holiday spirit, here I come.
It was definitely a moment worth pausing for. And right outside of Charlton's Coffee House, as in previous years, many festive songs were performed by vintage Christmas carolers clad in 18th century attire. Their old holiday harmonies drew people in, stirring the soul, just footsteps from the historic Capitol building. The evening sky grew darker, a Virginia sky I've seen many times before, yet it felt different tonight. Maybe it was the season or the occasion, or simply the way the end of a year makes you notice things more acutely. The windows of nearby homes and shops were illuminated with various themes and scenes, and nearby cressets were casting their flickering flames onto the cobblestone streets. As many often do here, I found myself looking inside, wondering about the lives that once filled these rooms. What did they do on cold December nights like this one? What were their lives like? Did they feel the same hope or sense of uncertainty at the end of a year? It's strange how the end of a year makes you reflective without hardly trying. I thought about the stories I'm grateful to have told here over the years. Stories of people, places, and events that are both rooted in history and deeply connected to the present. I've spent so much time trying to capture the essence of this place, and yet, I don't think I ever truly will. As the night wore on, more people began gathering for the Grand Illumination, a tradition that turns an already magical place into something extraordinary. Yet, amidst the crowds, there were still quiet corners, places where the spirit of the season lingered without fanfare. I found myself drawn to those spaces. As time passed, the sense of anticipation grew. Performers continued to draw crowds, their energy magnetic. I recalled a moment standing near Shields Tavern. Inside, people were gathered around tables, their faces lit with the soft glow of candlelight. It was the kind of scene that made you want to linger, to let the world outside slip away for a while. Lost in explore mode, I slowly began to hear the faint sound of Thomas Jefferson's voice rising above the bustle of the city. Following the sound, I found him standing on a small stage in front of the Capitol. Before him, a gathered crowd hanging onto his every word.
To all here assembled, my name, for better or worse, is Thomas Jefferson. On this grand illumination, it is indeed my pleasure to be amongst you, to be your friend, your counterpart, and indeed your fellow citizen.
His voice carried easily, steady, confident, and with the natural authority of someone who seemed born to address a nation. He spoke about the significance of the occasion, weaving words of unity and reflection into the expectations of the evening.
The grand pyrotechnics, which we have all come to enjoy and expect this evening, will burst forth and brighten the merriest of holiday seasons.
The crowd leaned in, captivated, as he boldly requested the firing of the guns.
Captain, the Capitol building, upon your orders.
Go! Hey, ready! Go!
Jefferson's presence seemed to anchor the energy of the evening, setting a tone that was both reverent and celebratory.
And so, on behalf of the City of Williamsburg and the Colonial Williamsburg Foundation, welcome to a Colonial Williamsburg Grand Illumination!
Citizens of Williamsburg and esteemed guests, the heralded moment has now arrived. With gratitude to the City of Williamsburg and to all who have made this celebratory evening of light and wonder possible, you are hereby invited to enjoy the pyrotechnic magic of a Colonial Williamsburg Grand Illumination.
And then, finally, the moment everyone had been waiting for.
Fire!
The first firework shot into the sky, its light cutting through the darkness directly in front of the Capitol. There was a collective gasp followed by cheers as the explosion of color lit up the night. For a few minutes, everything else seemed to fade away. The noise of the crowd, the chill in the air, it all disappeared, replaced by the pure, unfiltered joy of the moment. The fireworks came one after another, each one more spectacular than the last. They weren't just a display. They were a celebration, a reminder of why we were all here. Standing there, surrounded by people from all walks of life, I felt a deep sense of gratitude, not just for the night, but for the city itself, for the stories it holds and the way it brings people together. It wasn't just a spectacle, it was a moment of collective wonder, and I wanted to capture it not just as it looked, but as it felt. A blur of color and sound lit the faces of the crowd and casted shadows onto the buildings. I filmed the way the light danced on the cobblestones, the way the fireworks seemed to reflect in the eyes of the townspeople. For most of the night, though, it had been just me, alone in the city, wandering its streets, letting my thoughts drift as I captured moments. But to my delight, suddenly, Sarah had finally arrived just in the nick of time, meeting up with me on the Capitol side of Williamsburg, just as the fireworks were beginning their final act. Luckily, we got to watch a few of them together. A tradition we've kept long before I began making documentaries in the area. As the fireworks faded and the crowd began to disperse, we stayed for a while longer. The streets were quieter now, but there was still a sense of life, a feeling that the night wasn't quite ready to end. As we walked past faintly lit colonial homes and shops sitting along the Duke of Gloucester Street one last time, I thought about all the moments that had brought us here to this night in this place. "5 years of stories, 5 years of memories. And yet, it never feels like quite enough. There's always more to see, more to learn, more to share." Tonight was a reminder of that. A reminder of why I'll keep coming back. As long as this place has stories to tell.